Uh, uh, Hello, welcome back to the continuing lecture in stock valuation. This is Dr. Jeff Hong, and this is the video number 4, part B. Now, so in our last lecture, we discussed the golden growth model, which is also called uh, constant growth model or constant dividend growth model. Now, so we are moving on to the variable growth model today in this lecture. Actually, if you think about it, the assumption of constant dividend growth is rather a very restrictive assumption, rather artificial assumption. As you may understand from our discussions in our previous discussions, right? The actual growth rates are actually uneven, right? And we are just, annualizing or taking the geometric average of the growth rates to even out the uneven actual dividend growths. So, and even if it is uneven growth, if we are taking the average, right, the geometric average of those uneven growth rates, it's basically based on the assumption that in the long run, right, the overall growth would be on a constant basis, right? Yeah. In other words, what it is saying is, basically like this: the temporarily, right? This is something you would see in real data, especially in the stock market. I'm not talking about the price. I'm talking about the returns. Now think about it. Daily, right? You would see a lot of fluctuations, right? You would see a lot of fluctuations, ups and downs, spike and dip, right? But if this is daily or even, hourly data, although it looks like, it's chaotic, right? Like a Brownian motion, right? Brownian motion is also called random walk because it's random pattern, right? But if you're looking at, just daily data, it looks like crazy like that. But if you elevate yourself to a higher plane or higher level and look at it from more macro perspective, right? If you look at the monthly data is like, average of 30 daily data like this, right? And then from annual perspective, right? I mean, from monthly perspective, if you are averaging out, right? If you're averaging out 30 daily returns, it would be, on average would be, something like a flat line. I mean, because it's an average number, it would be some, median value of this. And if you compile 12 monthly averages, then and look at it from annual perspective, right? If you connect those 12 monthly averages, they would seem more like a curvilinear or more, smoothed out pattern. The pattern will look more smoothed out, Make sense? Okay. So the point is, although the actual monthly returns would be, or daily returns data, right? May seem, so hectic and chaotic, but if you can smooth it out, and from a higher macro perspective, uh, they will always fluctuate between. They will fluctuate between, I mean, one month it may be, 15%. Another month it will be, it may be, negative 5%. Another month it may be uh, 10%, and so. But they are pretty much, from if you look at it from annual perspective, right? They are pretty much fluctuating within um, uh, a constant range, right? So that is why we have that constant growth model or golden growth model. As I've been telling you, the actual actual data may be actual returns data are bound to be uneven, and that's the reality. That's natural. But then uh, from a higher uh, macro perspective, you can see why we can uh, why we are comfortable with using uh, a constant growth model, and that's basically based on the assumption, right, that the company is growing at some uh, steady rate. In other words, on average, so a steady, constant rate. Excuse me. Excuse me. Now, well, but again, then think about it. Growth at a constant rate comes only at the phase when the company is uh, relatively uh, growing at a constant. In other words, um, only when the company has obtained a certain, steady phase. Um, as we can all see from actual examples or data, um, companies are at the most, when the companies are first born, right, at its birth phase, right, early life of the company, it would go through a lot of fluctuations, right? The first 2 years, 2 to 3 years of, for most small businesses, first 2 years are critical period, 2 to 3 years. Why? Because small businesses generally uh, either fail or take off, right? And that threshold is somewhere around 2 to 3 years, and once they uh, pass through that point and reach some viable, steady, uh, steady sale and steady growth, then this company is now viable. This business is more viable. But before passing through that threshold, crossing over that threshold, the first 2-3 years are really, really critical um, time period. And I said, first 2 to 3 years, and this is mainly for small businesses. I mean, if it is, a large company, it may this threshold may be the first 5 years, but those are like critical periods. When Facebook first went public, uh, the first 3 to 5 years was period of first 3 to 5 years was very critical period, and there was a lot of risk, right? Uh, so that brings us to the concept of product life cycle. Now, the extension of this model, I mean, it's product life cycle, but that means the product life cycle means literally products have life cycle, like birth, and growth, maturity, and uh, demise, right? But it's a very well established and well known theory, and then actually, uh, it's so you might wonder, some products may uh, have a life cycle, but what about the companies? I mean, uh, stock value is derived from the company's overall performance, not just one single product. Yeah, I mean, true. So the extension of product life cycle model is actually industry life cycle. Industry life cycle. So, but it's easier to use product life cycle products as a example because they have more immediate bearings with uh, the examples in actual life. So now let's think about it. What product life cycle means that uh, products are all born, right, through research and development, R&D, right? An innovative product is born as a result of R&D, right? And when I say innovative product, that means a product that has never existed before, right? So this green curve represents the innovating firm. Innovating firm means the innovator. Um, uh, it means simply the company that came up with an innovative product, right? Innovating firm sounds like this firm is um, going through innovation every day. Um, sounds like it is a going through a metamorphosis every day. Um, no, it simply means a company metamorphosis, right? Um, it simply means a company that just puts out an innovative product. And what's an innovative product? Innovative product simply means a novel product, not a novelty, but something that is new, original, and that has never existed before, right? So, for example, before iPhone, right? Uh, there was no smartphone. Now, some people may say, iPhone was not the first smartphone. There was, another company that, yeah, there may be another company that had the technology, but as far as the in terms of commercial success is concerned, right? As far as the commercial success is concerned, iPhone is the first one of its kind, right? Of course, we had mobile phones before that. The mobile phones date back date as far back as early 1980s, 83, 84, 85, if I remember correctly. And in those days, they had uh, a cell phone the size of a brick. It was called brick phone. It looked more like military radio, size of the military radio. And it didn't last, the battery didn't last that long, probably 30 minutes. So it was more like a status symbol. It was not actually uh, like a useful uh, product that you use, uh, for its utility, but more for the status symbol. Now, anyway, so and then when it became more popularized, that was only in mid 90s, and BlackBerry and all these cell phones came out. Of course, Samsung, what they call 2G phones now, right? The flip phone and 2G, second generation phones. These days, still, they use, some people use 2G phones, especially senior citizens who don't have very good acute vision. They need large keypad, no, no screen, no touch screen. But anyway, but iPhone was the first of its kind, and I think the iPhone 1 first came out in like 2007, and then it revolutionized the entire, mobile communications industry, or IT industry in general. Now, but so it was an innovative product because nothing was like that. No touch, screen before that. And they started to call it smartphone. But whatever they call it, that's not the point. The point is, iPhone is a result of, it's an outcome of very heavy R&D. A lot of investment went into that R&D, and then it came out, and that's stage one. And in stage one, only a handful of people use it. They're called early adopters. They and then and at that point it must have been very expensive at that point, and but it was an innovative product. As soon as it hit the market, the sales, in other words, adoption by the market, right? Market is catching on, right? And then so it grew exponentially. It grew drastically, exponentially. They like to use the expression exponential growth. Exponential. What does exponential growth mean? Huh? Now, here I'm going to get to that later, but pay attention to the shape of this curve. See, the shape of this curve is not like this red curve. Red curve is growing, it's increasing at a very steady rate. Right, steady rate up to a certain point, and then steep. The steep at the steep phase, right? And then the slope of this red curve is getting flatter, right, as time goes on. But if you look at this green curve, um, it was starting, the growth rate seems rather relatively flatter than this range, and then as it entered this range, uh, it gets very steeper than this range, right? So in other words, it looks like this, right? It looks like this, rather than like this, right? So uh, that's exponential growth, right? Um, you might wonder, exponential, I cannot, right? It takes so much time. You might wonder, um, this has a steep growth pattern. It shows, the slope of this curve is steep from the beginning. Doesn't that mean this is growing at a faster rate? Uh, um, no, not necessarily. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at only this range, this is relatively, slow. The growth rate is, flatter. That's not what is, meant by exponential. And I'm going to get to that later. But let's take a look at this. So the innovative firm is enjoying a period of monopoly. That means, before the competitors comes into the market, um, they are enjoying the monopoly until that point because they are the only one. And when the innovative product is, gaining so much popularity, then the competitors enter the market. Okay, of course, the reason they are this company is the let's call this Apple, and let's call this Samsung, and Motorola, and technology-wise, they have different. iPhone is based on their own technology, Apple's own and Samsung and other Motorola is their technology is based on Google's Android. Um, but either way, obviously, Apple wouldn't let other companies steal their or use their technology, right? So obviously, until they came up with their own technology, which is, actually Google's, Android technology, right? Um, Apple iPhone was the only smartphone in the market, right? So they had a brief period of monopoly, and then the competitors enter the market. And now the competitors are growing at a very steady and fast rate because you might say, you can't, you can't compare Samsung with Apple. Apple's much better, blah blah blah. Some people, but honestly, and personally, me, to me, it's a debate between Pepsi and Coke. Some people might say, oh, give me Pepsi or death. Some people, look, that is just frivolous, right? Frivolous and trivial debate, right? Does it really matter? And people were saying, iPhone is, there's no comparison. iPhone is far better. Oh, maybe it just satisfies you more, but objectively, I mean, iPhone may have better camera resolution or whatever, but as far as what a smartphone uh, is, supposed to do, oh, Galaxy is a wonderful phone, right? But in the early stage, maybe uh, a difference in technology or a difference in resulting difference in quality maybe could have been discernible, but they are pretty much they deliver the same service, right? They do the same. They basically do the same thing. It's computer plus phone, right? Now, so in the second stage, which is called growth stage, the entire industry is almost, growing at a um, uh, by leaps and bounds, right? Now, the competitors would obviously competitors would be offering the product at a cheaper price, so there will be more sale of competitors' products, and the innovator's product generally reaches, its peak, right? At this point, uh, when the competitor reaches its peak, right, that means growth rate is zero, isn't it right? That makes sense. When it plateaus, right, that means it's no longer growing. Growth rate is zero, right? That's when it hits um, the apex or the plateau. It plateaus out, and then, but the innovator generally goes out in stage two, and growth means growth for the industry, right? Growth for the industry, not for um, just one company, right? And then in stage three, which is the maturity stage, right? Uh, innovator generally goes into decline. And but the entire industry is in mass production stage, and then in stage four, it's in decline. Now, maturity means when it is mature, when the market is mature, right? The market that means there's no room for growth. So there's no room for growth. So uh, the sales revenue hits the plateau, and the slope is zero because slope represents the rate of growth. But this is not necessarily always the case, because if it is, smartphone industry, right? As far as the smartphone industry is concerned, iPhone is still not here. I mean, iPhone may have hit somewhere around here, but it's not. It is still, not, in decline. Um, Also, there are many examples of the industry not going into decline at all. Products may go into decline, but the industry doesn't. For example, one good example is uh, the VCR, or video recorder and video player. Now, back in 1980s, there were two types of video systems, video player systems, VHS and Betamax. And actually, VHS system, won out. Betamax, went into decline. But even VHS system went into decline by late 1990s, because I mean, by mid 1990s. Why? Because there's nobody was, there was already a new product called, DVD. So instead of, cassette tapes, right? Um, the contents were on DVD. So the DVD players took over, just like, cassette uh, cassette record players were um, replaced by Sony Walkman, and the Walkman, uh, which was playing small cassette uh, tapes, was replaced by uh, CD-ROM Walkman, right? Walkman that was playing CD, and then by 1990s, video cassettes, VCR players are all gone. Products are phased out, but companies were still going because the industry simply replaced that VCR with DVD players. So products may go into decline, but the industries may not go into decline. Another example I would like to use is the bicycles. But we're almost out of time, so I'm not going to go into the bicycle example. But what I'm trying to say here is so here at least we can identify four different growth rates, growth phases. First, the growth phase that are showing exhibiting exponential growth, right? And then steady, and after that slower growth, right? Slower growth, and then zero growth, and then when it is in decline, what does the growth rate is negative, right? Now, of course, as an investor, nobody will be interested in the negative growth, any company that is in negative growth or in zero growth, right? As a rational investor, you will be interested only in the fast growth phase, right? They are all positive growth, and this is high growth, fast high growth, and relatively slower and lower growth rate, right? And as an investor, so the phase that are growth phases that are of interest to you are these two growth rates, phases, fast growth phase and slower growth, slower and steady growth phase. Okay. Now, as for the exponential growth, I'm going to have to use a, let's see, let me use whiteboard, right? So I'm going to switch to whiteboard. So how's, how's everybody? Can you all see this whiteboard? Okay, let me use the pencil. So when we say growth, actually there are three types of growth. First of all, this is growth, clearly, right? But also, a growth can take this pattern, right? So what is the difference between the two? In this pattern, let's call it, A, and let's call this B. In growth pattern A, the growth, what you can see is the growth rate is constant, right? Makes sense? In other words, if you take the slope, and what is the slope? Slope is the, change in rise over change in run, right? And since this is a straight line, the slope is the basically slope represents the growth, and the slope is uniform or steady, right? It's just the same slope through and through. So that means it's growing at a constant rate. And of course, in reality, nothing is like that. I've been telling you, you can smooth it out like that, but in reality, it would be, right? There will be a lot of, uneven fluctuations, right? Makes sense? There will be a lot of, uneven fluctuations, but, when smoothed out, it will look, like that. Now, so this is, constant growth, right? This is A is constant growth or steady, constant or steady. I'm not going to write anymore because this is not writing, this is growing. But, what is B? It's called exponential growth. Because, in exponential function, right, it first starts slow and, it grows at a very slow rate. Then you see, as time goes on, the growth rate is accelerating, right? It's growing at a faster rate, right? As time goes on, it grows at a more steeper and faster rate. That's why it's called, exponential growth or exponential or exploding. That's really an explosive growth, is that right? Because the growth is accelerating. As time goes on. So this is the timeline. As the time goes on, right? Whatever this is, and this is the growth rate. The vertical axis is the growth rate, right? Explosive, right? When people say, pointing at, this straight line, if they say, oh, we are having explosive growth now, or exponential growth, that means he doesn't know. This person doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know, right? If he knows any math, he cannot say this is, growing at an exponential or exploding. Only this is, exponential pattern of growth or explosive pattern of growth. Now, there's a third pattern, which is like this, right? Let's call this C. Growth pattern C. This is called decay. Right? Why is it called decay? Well, the growth rate is decaying. Early on, it's growing at a very steep or fast rate. And as time goes on, the rate is slowing down. At a certain point, it plateaus out. That's called decaying pattern, right? So there are, three patterns of, growth, and being able to tell the difference, that means you know what you're talking about, right? If you're, alrighty. So that's it for this segment of the lecture. And I will see you guys in the next video, next lecture. So end of video.